So we designed it, printed it. It's nice. I'm very happy with it. Look at that thing. That's awesome. Today, I'm making a mold of it. Lots of detail, a lot to get into. But I think we can get there. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to dam up these areas, right? Cheap paper plates. I'm going to cut stuff out, hot glue it in place, cover it in rubber. Done is done. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, first thing I'm going to do is take a couple paper plates. What I use doesn't really matter. We just need something there. I figured paper plates are inexpensive. Got these at the dollar store. Just going to put it on, trace it. So, all I did was trace, put something flat against it and cut it. Or draw a line so we can cut it. I'm going to try and do this backwards so you can see everything I'm doing. Now all I need to do is glue the two pieces together. It doesn't have to be fantastic. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to keep rubber out. So I'm going to put glue on both sides. It's kind of like weld. I want a slight return, but just a little bit. That way, when I do my slush cast, it'll be easier to know where everything is. Luckily, I'm using medium heat glue sticks and a high heat gun, so it kind of over melts a bit, which means it stays liquidy a bit longer. Nice thing about using hot glue is it doesn't mess with the model at all. So if I decide at some point in time I want to use this as an actual Tusken, I can. So, next part, just cover this up. I may be able to just use one plate, which would be nice. Not that it really matters. Kim bought a wooden hand. But more importantly, the box is enameled, which is fantastic, which means the rubber we're going to put on it isn't going to stick to it. So what I want to do is I want to raise this up about half an inch, maybe an inch, just so, like I said, I'll have a slight return. When I slush cast, it's going to make it much easier. So we're just going to cut a bunch of strips. My yardstick seems to be missing. Jeez Louise, my yardstick's missing, my knife is missing. So I'm going to cut a bunch of strips about this thickness. Smart thing to do would have been to print it with this standoff, but you know, let's not start doing the smart thing now. Jeez. I'm going to start in the middle. I'm just going to glue it around. I might even just put it on top. And I get all crazy about it. I'm sure this is absolutely not how those in the industry would do this. I'm not in the industry. And that's super important. I am just a guy in his garage with a hot glue gun and a lot of information. Am I as good as Ken? Not even close. I'm not trying to be as good as Ken. Just trying to be as good as me. And that's the important part. Don't try to be as good as anybody else. Only try to be as good as you. That person has spent their entire life being them. Or at least close to it. Don't be someone else. Be yourself. There we go. So, the dam, fully done, ready to be done. So, I like to glue these down. Get a bit of a wobble to it. See if it's the board. May not be the board. Is that kind of a weird thing going on here? Doesn't matter, glue's going to cover most of it anyway, but the better I can make it, there we go. The easier it's going to be in the long run, right? That's kind of the key of this whole process. It's all prep work. Had I not taken my time making the 3D file in the first place, then I'd be fighting an uphill battle. The more prep work we take care of, the better this whole project's going to turn out. And this is a fun project. This is the part that I love about costuming. I love making molds and resin and looking at things, figuring out how to make these things look like those things. Right? That's my part. When I watch movies, I don't see cool looking costume as he seems. I see panel lines. Everybody has a right to like the movies in their own way. So Ben Heck was working on a automated glue gun. That'd be super useful right about now. This squeezy is slightly annoying. Now we go over it, glasses on, and see what we missed. That should be good. We'll even unplug the glue gun. That's kind of a statement. I'm pretty happy with that. Excellent. We're going to reset and get rid of everything we're not using. I am using Rebound 25 from Smooth On. This is mixed equal parts by volume. I absolutely love this stuff. Absolutely love it. I have 3 cups. I have one for part A, one for part B, and then one for mixing together. They didn't have any yellow cups, so I got purple. Luckily, we don't need a lot of this. It's going to be a pretty small mixture. Because we're putting light coats on top first. We'll mix everything together, I'll probably get bigger cups. Or not. We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, this is a pretty tiny cup. I like to warm my rubber up. Bath of hot water tends to make things flow a little easier. This stuff is very thin and very viscous, which is what we want because it's going to capture all the detail. But we'll probably need about 3 coats, and then we can start thickening everything up. Oh, for the goodness. I am probably going to use, I'd say, this entire container on this one piece. We'll see. Not bad. Now they're both going to get dumped into this one cup. I don't degas, I don't vacuum, I don't do any of that. I should. There's no more to that sentence. That was stupid. Oh, it's my new mixing knife. Let's try not to cross-contaminate. I may have to just throw this entire cup out now. After I put the now you just mix until the color's even. You don't see any stripes, anything. Should take about 5 minutes. Not gonna make you watch the whole mixing process. That would be riveting television, but still. So I'm gonna dump this into this. This is an empty cup. That makes sure that I get all the stuff that's on the bottom mixed in as well. The last thing I want is a bunch of part A just stuck on the bottom. And then I go to pour, and I have all that part A as just part A. So I've mixed, right? And I have hot glue stuck to me. Bad as spider webs. Got a cheap chip brush that I am absolutely going to destroy. There's no saving it after this, right? This stuff is going to flow very thin. This first coat is just to get the detail. I believe the full cure on this is like 6 hours. We're only going to use 2 of it. Trying to get out as much of the air bubbles as I can. There are going to be flaws, there's going to be holes. There's going to be things that I didn't think of that I'm going to see and go, oh, that was stupid of me. Because I do that every time. That is okay. This main medallion on the forehead is all I'm really worried about as far as super detail goes. Because the whole thing is pretty well textured. I will more than likely have to mix more up. And that's fine. Now all this is going to settle weird. It's all going to want to slope down because, you know, gravity is a thing. And that's okay. The next one, I'm going to put a couple drops of thickener into it. There's a couple places I'm primarily concerned with. It's these knobs in the front and then the medallion on the forehead. Everything else, if there's a couple of bubbles, I can sand it out. If there's swirls or movement in it, it's a Tusken. So it's absolutely fine. Just trying to minimize cleanup later. I'm not trying to be pretty here. I'm just trying to make sure everything is covered. It's starting to set, so I have to be okay with where we're at. So I think where we're at is where we're at. See if I can get a little more in that forehead, and then we're gonna give it 2 hours, and we're gonna put another coat on. Poor brush. 2 hours. Starting now. So that did exactly what I thought it was going to do. Going to try and reuse the cups, which is why I got color coded. And then it occurred to me that that's just stupid, so I ain't doing that. First coat looks pretty good. Everywhere that I wanted to have silicone, it does. There's a couple of spots right here and like here that I think I'm going to fill up with the next part, but now we are using Thivex, which is a silicone dithyropic agent. Makes it thicker, which is good for helmets or for big casts like this. So we're going to mix up a little more. I'm happy with the first coat. The first coat looks good. I might just mix it into the cups. No need to get fancy. Right about there. Absolute guess. Luckily, it has no hazardous ingredients. So I'm going to mix one into the other, and then I mix the other into one. This is how I used to mix before I got all fancy and tried to do it the right way. As long as you keep mixing back and forth, eventually it's going to mix pretty well, right? You scrape the bottom every time, and then a little bit that doesn't mix suddenly mixes. It's probably the last time I'm going to pour back and forth. Mainly because the pinching motion hurt my hand. And before I get too far into it, I'm going to fill any voids that happen to have formed. Which is primarily right there. Everything else seems good. Alright. Let's thicken this puppy up a little bit. So even though it is thicker, it's still gonna, run a lot. I expect that. It's gonna get a mother mold on top of it, so it doesn't need to be super, super thick. I just want to make sure it doesn't tear when I cast. So the areas that I'm absolutely worried about, I'm gonna put a little extra. It's probably gonna need at least one more coat. And use everything that's left on the bottom here. I can almost hear the professionals screaming at me, "What are you doing?" And then I remember, professionals don't watch my videos. This one, I don't expect people to do. I don't expect anybody to play along with me on this one. Because, it's kind of hard to make a Tusken while someone else is making a Tusken. You know what I mean? Just putting pieces together, that's easy. Anybody can do that. Sculpting this, it's kind of an exacting skill. It's a goopy. 2 coats in the books. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to come back in 2 hours. Because it is a bit on the late side. If that's the case, well, this may be it. I should do at least one more coat, but like I said, there it is. We let it be. A couple more hours, hopefully. We'll give it maybe an hour, hour and a half. Might do it in an hour and a half instead of 2 hours. And might be able to get one more coat on. We'll see. We'll see. Should be the last one. I hope. We're going to add a bunch of thickener this time. Gonna make about that much. This is the exact same show as the show we just saw. So we're gonna mix everything together, dump it back in, mix everything together. That is probably way too much. I'd love to give it 2 more coats, but I think that's all we're getting out of it. Now the nights are still cold in my little suburb of Chicago, so this is going in my 3D printing room to stay warm. So until then, see you in 6 hours. Well, probably well past 6 hours. So today is tomorrow. This has had well enough time to cure. Now we're going to put the mother mold on, and I'm using laminating epoxy for this. If I can get these gloves out. Jeez Louise. The epoxy I'm using is Smooth On, medium epoxamite. Like I said, it's a laminating epoxy. It's designed for fiberglass and for being in multiple levels. Since it is not polyester, like standard fiberglass resin, it's much safer to be around. It's easier. It's not as tough on the lungs. Still should be in a ventilated area, but it's not terrible. This is mixed 3-to-1 by volume. This is just fiberglass matting. This you can get at almost any auto parts store. Okay, I'm gonna work in small strips. I'm just trying to cover it. Probably should have taken the film off before I put the gloves on. Again, since it's 3-to-1, I have weird little mixing cups. These I am doing separately. I'm going to try and keep the A cup with the A cup and the B cup with the B cup. I usually start with the A because the A is usually the resin and it tends to be the slower of the two. Mix well. So this has a working time, I believe, of 22 minutes. So I shouldn't be in a super huge rush. That's more than enough time to do what I'm doing. Another cheap disposable brush. Then we mix until we think we're done. Then we mix some more. And then you mix more. This stuff does have kind of a funky smell to it, so try to be in a well-ventilated area. A nice thin coat. Put the fiberglass on, let it wick itself through. Ideally, you want perfectly smooth molds. That would make this much easier. But I'm using these weird bumps as registration. Luckily, it's cold in here, which will slow down the reaction considerably. If you're in a warmer climate, it will do the opposite. Something to keep in mind. I'm just working the fiberglassing in now. Now you see why I'm wearing gloves. This is a messy, messy job. Strips are always easier to use. Everything's all sticky. So I'm way too hands-on when it comes to this stuff. This is the part that I enjoy doing. I enjoy getting my hands dirty. I enjoy, the feel of resin under my gloves, that kind of thing. It's weird. I'm a weird guy, I know. This is where having a super smooth mold would come in super useful. Because right now I've got to fight with all these ridges I put in. The other thing I have to worry about is my shirt is just dangerously close to this stuff. So if this was a super, super important part, this is not how I would be doing this. This is just a mother mold. I could use plaster bandages if I really wanted. It's just there to keep the silicone in place for slush casting. Smart thing to do would have been had all these cut beforehand. But as we have figured out, I don't always do things the smart way, huh? So the more you mess with fiberglass, the worse it gets. There's going to be a point where I'm just pulling up as much as I'm laying down. That's when I know when I'm done. So those of you who have done this before, you're going to look at this and go, this guy's an idiot. You are correct. But I enjoy what I'm doing. I'm an idiot having fun. Properly fiberglassing is an art form. When done correctly, it's amazing looking. I mean, you can sit there and watch this stuff all day long. This is not the right way. Before y'all come jumping at me on the comments, I know it's not the right way. Maybe when I do the Veritech helmet, I'll do it right. Maybe. Since this is just a one piece, and I'm just doing the thing, I don't really care. Alright, now for the dangerous part. Three to one. We're going to do it again. Get back to that. Cutting more pieces. Were I doing anything but making a jacket for this thing, I would absolutely be taking way more care Be working from top to bottom. That way when I pour resin, it goes in the right direction. I'd be doing a lot of things differently. I should be doing lots of little strips. I shouldn't be smushing it around as much as I am. But I want to get my hands dirty. I want to have fun. I want to smush everything. I am prepared for it to be a little less effective because of that. I understand the ramifications of what I am doing. I also know that when everything starts to do its thing, I'm going to have plenty of time. Make sure it's all exactly where I want it. Now we wait about 10 minutes and smush everything back down to make sure it's all nice and in place after I dump the rest of this on. So there it is. As good as I'm going to do. I'm going to come back in 16 hours, see what we got. Until then, everything goes back into a heated room, and I walk away. It has had overnight, and it is hard as a coffin nail, which may make things a little difficult. But, let's see if we can try and crack this thing off. The nice thing about the silicone we used is nothing really sticks to it. Let me get a prying device, and I'll be right back. I was looking for my 5-in-1, couldn't find it. So I got a putty knife. This might help. All I gotta do is get started and it'll crack. Getting the mother mold off is usually the hardest part. The smart thing to do would have been to have sealed the lumber I was working on. That way it would pop off a bit easier, but you know. No, didn't think of that one. Porous material, resin. I could get a Dremel. That would probably make things way faster. But I'm being difficult. No, really? So uncharacteristic of you. Do things the hard way. The safety squid's engaged. There we go. Hey. Now, carefully peel the latex up. I've got a corner started over here. I'm just going to work my way all the way around my flat pry bar. Speaking of registrations, these two aren't going to lock together perfectly. That is by design, because it's a Tusken and I want slight variations in the mask. Not enough that you're like, oh, that was slipdash. No, I want just enough to make them individual, and subtly so. Now I trim away flashing. Surprisingly little. I was expecting way more. Almost none of it got past my hot glue. It's pretty nice. And now we ginger careful take this whole thing apart. Nice thing about silicone is it bonds to nothing but silicone. So I should be able to carefully take this whole thing apart and have a completely unmessed with mask. Now if the thing is relatively porous, it'll take advantage of that. I'm a little worried about this paper plate. I tried to get waxed paper plates just because of this, but you never know. Alright, I do have flashing on the inside that I just need to trim out. Now this part, the bottom, very thin. That's probably going to be the first place to tear. And that's okay. It's actually not difficult to repair it. Like I said, silicone bonds to silicone. This is also going to be the same process when we slush cast it. This whole taking it apart this easily, this carefully. So I do not want to tear my mold if I can avoid it. I have a nice thick ring all the way around the edge. So I should be able to flip it inside out and just carefully peel it off. Look at that though. How neat is that? So there's paper still left on here, which is fine. When we do our first cast, the resin's going to bond to that and clean it off the mold pretty easy. Looks like the visor's the hard part. Hey. It's an inside-out Tusken. Neat. And that just rests in there. And we are ready to cast. Look at that. There's no real force behind this, so I'm not worried about it casting weird. There's a couple spots in here that look like it didn't quite fill in right, so they're going to be a little light in those areas. Also not that big of a deal. Peel off our hot glue, and our master should be back to normal. Like I said, there's a couple of spots we're going to have to pull out a little bit of a silicone. Well, it's not terrible. I'm really happy with how this looks. I've made quite a few molds. And it's still neat to see them every time. You demold and then you have this really interesting inverse of what you've been working on. When I put this away for storage, I'm going to put this back in the mold. And I'm going to put the whole thing somewhere. Probably with the rest of my molds. Or probably with the rest of my vacuform stuff, to be honest. But we'll get back to that. Right now, I'm going to clean everything up, prep for the next step, which is slush casting. That's going to be cool because then we get to see everything do the thing. So I will be right back. Alright, so I'm editing this one and it's getting a little on the long side, so we're going to cut it here. We're going to separate this into two parts. The mold that we just did, next one we're going to do slush casting. Slush casting should be quick, easy. We might do a couple interesting things in that one. We'll see where we're at. So that about does it for this one. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you know, the like and subscribe, comment thing. I'll see you on the next one.